Tuesday. Who has missed the taco song? It's been a couple weeks. I don't know if you guys miss it like I do, but I can't not smile. Oh, it's so fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to turn down our taco song, and if you've missed it, you're going to have to catch up on the replay. Well, we'll bring it back at the end, too, just because that's how I do all the time. So, let me get all cozy and comfy, and we're going to sit down, and we're going to have our chat today. So, when somebody pops up on TikTok, we are doing this on TikTok today, too. So, I decided it would be a really good time to sit down and have a chat together. Originally, I had planned to do this chat on Saturday, and we got a big ugly storm and things went sideways. Hello, Raven. It's so nice to see you. So today we are doing a feature that I regularly do on my YouTube and my Instagram, and I've decided this week to invite you guys on TikTok. And on Tuesdays we do Taco Bout It Tuesday, and we discuss a whole bunch of different topics depending on the week. Today we're going to talk about depression. So I figured a really good place to start, I sent myself a link so that we could have something to chat about. Hello, positive energy. So nice to see you. So today we're going to talk about depression, the different kinds of depression, and my own personal battle with lifelong depression and how I deal with that. So the first thing I did was I sent myself the actual definitions and different types of depression so that we can sit down and discuss them and talk about some of the different kinds of depression. Because depression isn't just like a common cold. It's not, hey, you don't feel really good right now, take this pill and let me know. But there are different kinds of depression, and depending on what you're suffering from, the treatment is different. Brooke, I'm so glad you're here. I was hoping, girl, I was hoping with our time change that you might be able to hang out, because I feel like this is a live that you need to be here for. I understand that a lot of people don't think that kids suffer from depression. I get it. Kids are happy. Kids bounce back. Nothing damages kids. Kids shouldn't deal with depression. But I will tell you that my mother remembers me having periods of depression as young as 3 years old. I was 3, I was 5, I was 7. I was a very melancholy, depressed child. Like, Eeyore. I was very Eeyore, and it didn't really seem to matter what I did or what the people around me did. I was never happy. And it was something that I had diagnosed in my later 20s. So let's start with looking at the types of depression. I'll explain to you what I go through, and then we'll talk a little bit about how I deal with that on a daily basis. So the first depression that we have listed is called major depressive disorder. So over 16 million Americans, and a majority of them being women, experience this incredibly common form of depression known as major or clinical depression. An individual might have this type of depression if they feel depressed the majority of the time. Symptoms for this individual include a loss of interest or pleasure from their activities, weight loss or gain, difficulty sleeping, constantly feeling tired throughout the day, lack of energy. Other symptoms include feeling restless, feeling agitated, very sluggish, slowed down mentally or physically, feeling worthless, guilty, have difficulty concentrating, and many thoughts of suicide. A doctor can diagnose an individual with major or clinical depression if they display 5 or more of these symptoms 3 or more days of the week or longer, depending on the situation. Okay, so let's see. Treatment options for patients include talk therapy with a mental health professional, antidepressants, and therapy if medications do not work. So the second is what I was diagnosed with, which is called persistent depressive disorder, or they used to refer to it as dysthymia. If a patient displays signs of depression for 2 years or longer, it is known as a persistent depressive disorder. This term describes 2 conditions on the opposite side of the spectrum, previously known as dysthymia, that I told you, which is a low-grade persistent depression, a chronic major depression. The symptoms of persistent depressive disorder include a change in appetite, sleeping too little or too much, fatigue, lack of energy, low self-esteem, difficulty concentrating and making decisions, a feeling of hopelessness similar to the symptoms of major depression. Again, similar to major and clinical depression, a patient can be treated with psychotherapy, medication, or a combination of the two. Clinical is the most common form of depression. I would say for me, I definitely know that it is the severe depressive disorder, the persistent, because my depression started when I was so young and lasted so long in my life. So we'll come back around to that, and I will talk to you guys a little bit about my personal journey, but let's continue on and read some of the other forms of depression so that some of you may be able to get an idea of what may or may not be going on with you. So the next we have is bipolar disorder. A patient dealing with a bipolar disorder, also referred to as a manic depression, will experience mood swings with an extreme range from high energy or an up mood to a very low depressive episode. Bipolar disorder is simply a brain disorder that causes unusual mood shifts. When the patient is in a low phase, they often display symptoms of major or clinical depression. Medication can help with controlling the frequency and intensity of these episodes, regardless if the patient is in a high or low period. A doctor may suggest a mood stabilizer, such as lithium, or an American Food Administration approved additive. So that doesn't surprise me. That's usually very high with the medication. And it matters. And Brooke, you're young, so they may not even be willing to diagnose you at the age that you are. I'm not going to lie. I do encourage you to talk to your parents about talking to your family doctor. If you are feeling periods of sadness and depression for a longer period of time than is normal. We all go through periods of sadness. We all have bad days, sad days, hard days. But if that is how you feel the majority of the time and not just once in a while, then it's something you need to talk to your parents about and you need to talk to your doctor about. And it will make a difference, I promise. So the next is seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, which is a type of major depression that often affects an individual during the winter months as the days become shorter and they receive less sunlight. SAD affects approximately 500,000 patients annually, and its symptoms include fatigue, clinical depression, and other psychological signs. This condition generally lessens as the spring and summer months begin, and a patient can receive natural sources of vitamin D. So that tends to be something that's seasonal. If you find that, you have the winter blues every year and it takes you quite a while to come out of them, then that is SAD. is what they call that. Psychotic depression. Individuals with psychotic depression typically have the same symptoms as major depression, such as lack of interest in activities, constant fatigue, difficulty sleeping and concentrating, feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness. However, these individuals with this type of depression also display symptoms of psychosis, such as hallucinations, seeing and hearing things that are not present, delusions, false beliefs, paranoia, wrongly believing that others are trying to harm them. Similar to other forms of depression, a combination of antidepressants and antipsychotic medications can be used to treat this condition. Then we have postpartum, premenstrual, and dysphoric disorder, when women experience symptoms of major depression in the weeks or months following the birth of their child as a peripartum. According to research, 1 out of every 7 new mothers experience postpartum depression, and it is unique to every mom in their severity, and symptoms may differ. Antidepressants as well as medications may help from these who suffer this type of depression. This is usually something that will go away on its own. It's related strictly to having a baby. Brooke says, I have ADHD, and no, you've not talked to your doctors. And I think that you should. I think you should talk to your family doctor, and you should definitely talk to your parents. Because I can tell you from experience that the feelings that you're having now are going to intensify as you get older. A lot of these things and feelings are affected by hormones. And as your body goes through changes, these things, they become more severe and not less so. So I want to really encourage you to start dealing with this now before it becomes really, really, really dangerous for you. Okay, so then we have situational and atypical depression. Although it is not a technical term recognized in psychiatry, many individuals at some point in their life have been in a depressed mood and experiencing difficulty in managing a stressful life event, such as a death, a divorce, a loss of a job. Doctors may call this a stress response syndrome, where psychotherapy or talking to a mental health professional can help an individual get through a traumatic episode in their life that triggers symptoms of depression. And this, I would say, is the most common form of depression, because we can all go through these periods in life where things are not going well. A relationship has failed, we've lost a parent, a sibling, a loved one, we've lost a job, we're losing our house. These things are situational, and as the situation improves, you feel better. So you might need medication for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month to get through that. But that type of depression will often pass on its own. But if you are living in a world where this is how you feel all of the time, or most of the time, or more than half of the time, if you feel sad and depressed more than 3 days a week, it's a problem. It's something that you need to look at and deal with, honestly, before it becomes too difficult. So let's talk a little bit about my depression. And I didn't get diagnosed until I was in my mid-20s, and it was after I had my son. And it was after the first time I attempted to take my own life. And that was a pretty tragic time for me. I was too young to have felt that hopeless in life and feel like there isn't any other way out. I've heard it described before as your brain trying to kill you, and I don't know any better way to describe it. It's a constant thought. It's a constant voice that you always hear that says, well, I'm ugly, or I'm stupid, or nobody cares anyways, and you know what, I could be gone tomorrow and nobody would care. It wouldn't make a difference to anybody. None of those thoughts are true. None of it is right. But I would repeat it to myself over and over and over again. And what I have learned as I've gotten older is it's not the one time that someone says something mean or hurtful that really damages you long term. Because people can say anything they want to you. It's you who decides, is that truth or is it not? Anybody can walk up to you on the street and say, hey, you're ugly. And you can either say, oh my God, I'm ugly, and you can walk away and repeat to yourself over and over and over again, I'm ugly, that person thinks I'm ugly. Or when someone walks up to you and says, you're ugly, you can say, you don't know what you're talking about. I know who I am. I'm beautiful. I'm worthy. I'm worth it. And you can repeat that in your head all day, every day. And the things that we say to ourselves are really what controls how our mind works. At the end of the day, we feed our brain thoughts, and that is how our brain grows. And it's hard. I understand. I didn't cut myself. I didn't do any of that. I did other self-harming things. I took medications I shouldn't. I engaged in risky behaviors that I shouldn't. I fantasized a lot about suicide, to be honest with you. I thought about it a lot because it was always my backup plan. You know, if life got too hard and it was too difficult, I always had an out. I always had a backup plan, and I always had somewhere I could go and escape to. And after I had my son, that changed because I couldn't bear the thought of doing that to him. That would be so damaging, you know, for a child to have their mother commit suicide. So I never did that. After I had my son, I stopped attempting things like that, but I didn't stop thinking about it. I started thinking about accidents instead, because then that wouldn't be my fault, right? It wouldn't actually be my fault if it happened. And I don't even know how many times I was driving down the highway, driving down the highway, and the thought occurred to me, what would happen if I just accidentally swerved into this oncoming semi? What would happen? That would be just fine. That would be okay. And I don't even know how many times I physically had to resist the urge to swerve into oncoming traffic. Because when you are in so much pain, you don't really understand that there's something on the other side of that there is somewhere on the other side of that, because your brain isn't processing properly. You're not thinking rationally. And it just doesn't, the pieces don't fit together, and it doesn't make sense. It's all raw feelings and no logic in there anywhere. Does that make sense to you? And I was always a sad kid. I was always a melancholy kid. And when I hit my teenage years, that got worse. And I started to be more and more emotional and more depressed. It wasn't until probably my 30s when I started to better recognize the signs of depression. And now I can tell when my mood is changing, when I am starting to feel depressed. When I was younger, by the time I realized I was depressed, I was so depressed that I didn't know where to begin to claw my way out of that. I just felt like I was sitting in the bottom of an endless pit, and I didn't really know where to begin with that. And I will say that it didn't change for me until it kind of changed by accident, oddly enough. A lot of you guys know that I do the ketogenic diet, the keto eating, which is high fat, low carb. So I don't eat any wheats, grains, rices, breads, anything like that. And I stay away from the higher carb vegetables. But when I changed the way I was eating, that's when my depression changed. And I know that sounds crazy. I never would have believed it in a lifetime. If anybody said to me, Dory, you wake up every day and you want to kill yourself, that is because of the food you're eating. I never would have believed them that it was that. I hadn't researched a ketogenic diet much in advance. I found it by accident, and I didn't really know the benefits that keto would have. I didn't know what to look forward to. I saw one video, it seemed to make sense, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do this keto thing. I'm gonna eat the food. I'm gonna diet the diet. I'm gonna do the thing. But after a couple of weeks of changing my eating, I woke up one day and I realized that I wasn't depressed. I wasn't sad. I didn't want to kill myself that day. And I thought, okay, Dory, how long has it been since you were that sad? And I realized it had been a while. And when I started to do some more research, what I learned is that for some people, they can process sugars and carbs just fine. And for other people, it breaks down their mental process. And for me, it was breaking down my mental process. And that's the only way I can explain it. Because when I don't eat the carbs and I don't eat the grains and I don't eat the rices, I don't feel miserable and depressed like I used to. It's been a long time since I felt that way. And for the people who have been with me for quite a while, because, dude, I've been out here on the internet with you guys for, a year and a half, almost 2 years now. Happy birthday to us, by the way. I found an old clip video from before I had editing software, and I did a live with Headbangers Kitchen with Sahil, and I literally had to clip it into 2-minute clips to send it to myself. I found it today. I pieced it back together like Humpty Dumpty, and I posted it on YouTube. So if you guys want to check that out, it's been a long ride, and we've shared a lot of things together, and we've touched briefly on depression and ketogenic eating, but not all that much, to be honest with you. Probably not as much as we should have, considering it's my whole life. But I've been leery to talk to you guys about it, and for a reason, because everybody comes to me for my happiness, right? Dory is bouncy, Dory is happy, Dory is fun, Dory's always happy. If you're sad and you're having a bad day, you could just pop by Dory's page and Dory has like all of the excitement and happiness for you. So it's hard for me to step out of who I am now and talk to you guys about who I used to be. You know, it's really hard for me to do that because I know that people come to me for the happy side, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. Like, Dory never wants to be the Debbie Downer, but at the same point, I know that there are a lot of people who are suffering like I suffered every single day and struggling just to get up in the morning, to get through the day, and to not kill themselves every day. Like, as sad and as melodramatic as that sounds, I know that that is the truth. And there are people out there like I was who wouldn't even know that it's what they're eating. I was literally poisoning my own brain, and I didn't know. I had no idea that these things were affecting me, because that's the one I'm going to say. If you guys are back, haha. I don't know why you paused. And you're the version I'm saving for the record, so Pardon the weird pause. So in the beginning, we talked about the different forms of depression. So if you're curious about that, you can catch up on the replay. And we talked about each different type of depression and how it's treated differently. Because unfortunately, depression is almost looked at like the common cold. You go to your family doctor, you say, hey, I'm depressed. He says, here, try this antidepressant for 3 months and let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll try a different one. I tried every single antidepressant medication on the market at one point or another. I guarantee it. Some were good, some were bad. Some make you really suicidal, even though it's an antidepressant and it's meant to make you feel better. Some of them make you really, 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 really suicidal. I don't ever want to say take or don't take, but don't ever take Wellbutrin. Like, just don't ever do it. If your doctor ever wants to give you that one, just say, no, thank you. Do you have something else? Because that one made me the most suicidal out of any antidepressants that I took. And I went through that, I'd say probably from the time I was 15 when I made my first attempt on my life, because then you're under the warning, right? Like warning lights. There's something wrong with her. I had to go see the psychiatrist and the psychologist, and I had to do therapy. And I never really got properly diagnosed. I just bounced around from one antidepressant that didn't help to the next antidepressant that didn't help to the next antidepressant that didn't help. And after I had my son in my early 20s, I want to say I was about 23, I went and saw a psychiatrist. And this is how you get an official diagnosis. And they will go through an entire series of questionnaires. And basically what they're trying to decipher is the things we had spoken about in the types of depression. So how frequently are you depressed? How severe are the episodes of depression? Do you have manic highs? Is it, a regular every day? They look at mental imbalances, they look at chemical imbalances, and then they give you a diagnosis of what type of depression that you're suffering from. And at the end of that, what they told me is that medication isn't something that helps me on a regular basis. In a really deep period of depression, it can help. But I don't have a chemical imbalance. Depression is ingrained in my personality. It's just who I am. And if you guys missed in the beginning, what I was officially diagnosed with is called persistent depressive disorder, which just basically means I'm always depressed. Like that's pretty much me, was always me until I found keto, and I didn't feel that way all of the time. So I'm going to take a quick scroll because I can see that you guys have some questions here on TikTok. So I'm going to take a look. I'm so glad, Brooke, you need to go to the hospital and deal with this. You've been having a really hard time, and it's okay to admit that you need help. It is. And for you, especially because you're so young, you need to do this now before you get to the stress level that I was. You need that. Oh, hang on. We're falling down as I'm scrolling. I got you guys plugged in, so we're all weird here. Someone said, think of cute puppies. That helps. That definitely always helps when you think of things that make you happy. Raven says that she's dealing with clinical depression and also manic. And you know what? Manic depression is kind of scary because when you're on a high, you feel like everything is awesome. I have a cousin who suffers with bipolar, and her problem is when she's on a high, she feels like she doesn't need her medication because everything is good now. I'm healthy now. I'm not sick anymore. And then you hit the next period of down, and it's so far down. So that one is really, really hard. And definitely when you're dealing with loss. When my mom died, it was really, really difficult for me. That was when I regained the 20 pounds before I found keto, was due to my depression over losing my mom. I just couldn't process. I couldn't function. I did the bare minimum that I had to every day. I got up, I fed the people in my house, and I went back to bed. And that was it. And that was the beginning of my spiral. And it was really, really difficult. Embliss One says, I gave up on antidepressants because it's too much of a hassle and nothing helped. And that was me too. I gave up on all medications. I don't think I've taken an antidepressant medication probably since I was 25, and I will be 44 this summer, because I found it really on a regular basis didn't help me, and the side effects weren't pleasant. So if it didn't make me feel happier, it didn't make me less suicidal, and it made me feel like somebody hit me with their car, I didn't see any point in that. And I started trying to recognize my own periods of depression and learning to self-soothe. As crazy as that sounds, learning to retrain my thoughts, learning to live on the positive side, learning to try to filter out the negative voices. And it's hard. It's a process, because it is so much easier to believe the negative things that people say about us all day long. It's so easy to believe those things because we have those doubts. We have those fears already. So when someone says it out loud, it's really easy for us to accept that as truth. Whereas when someone gives you a compliment, what's our immediate reaction? Oh, no, I'm not great, I'm not awesome. And the first thing we do is dismiss that. Oh, well, they're just being silly, or you must be blind. I don't know what you're talking about. Ah, ha, ha, ha. And in uncomfortable laughter, we push away that compliment and we don't believe those good things about us. So for me, the change was learning that it was me. Learning that I'm the only one who has control over that, and learning that it really is my responsibility to make sure that I'm feeding my brain positive thoughts. And it's an every single day battle. Some days I wake up and I think, oh, I'm miserable, I don't feel like it, I'm not in the mood. And some days I'm still sad, but I'm not depressed like I used to be. I'm not miserable all the time like I used to be. Carolyn is fine says, I used to go through a lot of periods of severe anxiety and depression before keto, and now it's much easier to control my thoughts. And that's the key for me. I won't lie. I will not lie. The key for me is the keto. It's eliminating the carbs, the wheats, the grains, and the sugar. The sugar is a huge one, and I never knew it was that. I never knew it was that. But now I know that it is what I eat. If I decided I wanted to go back to eating breads and grains and carbs, I would feel exactly like I used to. And I don't want to go there. It wasn't a happy place to live. It really wasn't happy. Josh says, how do you deal with the stress? I damn near choked out my boss today. For me, my biggest stress releases are cooking, dancing, hanging out with you guys. When I'm really, really stressed out about something, I like to unplug. I will hit up the funny videos on TikTok. I will binge watch a TV series of something. I will soak in the tub. I'll go for a walk. I will chat it out with my friends. But I find for me the key is to not bottle things. I was always a bottler, where, you shove it down, and then all of a sudden you are exploding on everybody around you, and they're like, dude, what is wrong with you? And you're like, whatever. You don't know the stress I'm under. So I feel like when we feel these things coming on, it's important to take a minute for yourself. Slow down, breathe, count to 10, do something that makes you feel happy. read a little bit of a book, listen to your favorite song, take a minute to go through in your mind 5 things that you're happy for today. Because the old me, man, I could rant for 5 days about somebody dirty looked me in the grocery store, and one small bad thing would snowball, and it was like life would never be good again. It would never be good again because this bad thing happened and that bad thing happened. Caroline says, I don't feel so dizzy mentally or fuzzy anymore, and that's huge. And I agree with that one too. Man, I did not know that my brain could work so efficiently. Like, the things that I do in a day now, I couldn't have done in a month before, because my brain is just always firing. From the minute I wake up till the minute I go to bed, my brain is click, click, click. I'm thinking of new things all the time. All the time. Okay, so Embless1 says, no, and I don't take any antidepressants. Brooke says she hears the voices, which is so common with depression. It's your own voice that echoes over and over. Positive Energy says you need to know what's giving you the depression, and that's important. Is it situational? Is it mental? Is it a chemical imbalance? Is it situational? Are you depressed because of the situation that you're in? And at the beginning, when we go back, I'm going to post this on YouTube, and you can see in the beginning we talked about the different types of depression and the different kinds of treatments of those. So we covered those pretty good. Brooke says she likes to watch videos when she's stressing out, and I find that is amazing for me. I used to have really bad anxiety as well. I didn't want to leave the house, and that was very much tied into my low self-esteem. I was 290 pounds, and I literally felt like people were laughing at me on the street. That if I went somewhere, if I left my house, I felt like people were laughing at me, and I never wanted to go anywhere. I just wanted to stay home so that I didn't have to deal with people. Dosh says, see, I always turn to beer and food to deal with emotion, or I go to the gym and hurt myself, which I think isn't healthy and not much different than cutting. And it's not. I mean, a lot of us have very unhealthy ways of dealing with depression. For me, it was binge eating. It was emotional eating. I mean, I never cut my skin, but I may as well have, for how I treated my body and how I dealt with my emotions. I wasn't making myself healthier. I wasn't improving anything. And I had already decided that was my life. That's just how it was and how I was going to live. But when I found keto and it changed that is something that I really feel is important to share with you guys. Because for me to say 40 years of debilitating depression, I'm not dealing with those symptoms. I won't say I cured my depression. I didn't cure my depression. If I started eating my regular old way, it would come right back. But I'm symptom free right now. I don't get those major periods of lows. I don't have that voice in my head all of the time. I get the regular sad days that I imagine everybody else has had their whole life, where I get up and I think, oh, this is kind of a crummy day, but tomorrow will be better. And I never had that ability before. All I ever saw was the darkness, and there wasn't any other side to that. So let's get our last couple comments, and then I gotta sign out and go grab Jacob. Josh says, my body cut itself with stretch marks. I hear that, dude. High five. I got all the good stretch marks to prove that. Caroline says, I was a huge binge eater also. Now I draw or paint or walk around the neighborhood and look at flowers. And that is such an amazing way to deal with that. It gets you out in the fresh air, you get the vitamin D, you're feeling good about yourself. It's amazing. Josh says there's a major correlation between being low in vitamin D and depression, and that is true as well. And anyone in North America, you are deficient in vitamin D. I guarantee you that. We don't get enough through our sunlight. So absolutely everybody should take a vitamin D supplement to help with that as well. Nan says, I feel like keto has changed how I process things mentally and my reactions are more appropriate. Yes, that. Okay, so I never had a scale of appropriate reaction. Like, before keto, I just didn't. I didn't have any scale of what is an appropriate reaction. There was never any in between. I was either like happy with you or I hated your stupid guts. Like there was no reasonable medium in between. So we're going to wrap this up for today. If you guys want to talk more about it on Thursday, we do our Spill the Tea feature on Thursday and we talk about the real dish. So if you guys want to talk about depression more on Thursday, let's do that. And let's get right into it. Let's talk about severe depression and suicidal tendencies and how you deal with that. Because it's a huge one. It's a big one to bite off. But I think there are a lot of people who need this. And I think for me, I need to do it with you guys. Because it's hard to admit these things about yourself. I would love to pretend that that was never me. And I was never sad like that. Daddy's Panda read about tacos, and this is what you heard about tacos. It's time to dance out. So this is my regular feature. If you guys are on TikTok, you've never seen it before. On Tuesdays, we do a live Q&A chat. I call it Taco Bout It Tuesday. We talk about whatever issues we want, and here's the best part. We dance to the taco song. So let's dance out. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Tuesday. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for Wednesday, Getting Over the Hump. We're going to make some fun food, babies. And let's dance to the taco song. Who's ready? Taco Tuesday! My favorite taco song? It's raining tacos. Raining tacos. Have an awesome Tuesday, guys. I love you. Thanks for joining me for Taco Bout It Tuesday. Bye.